Thank you very much. As she mentioned, I'm an attorney. You have to figure with this many angels in one meeting, there has to be the devil somewhere. No? I want to thank Ellen for bringing us together, and also Chris Schneiders for organizing this amazing conference. I've worked with public counsel for 19 years looking at best practice models to break the cycle of intractable poverty, homelessness, and helplessness. And the therapeutic and collaborative justice model, which is designed to decriminalize mental illness, to decriminalize helplessness of homelessness, to decriminalize the trauma of acting out, of being a combat veteran returning from wars, or the trauma of having grown up without love in a foster care home and ending up institutionalized most of your life. I can't think of a more important conversation that we've had today, that we've engaged each other in, and I'm really grateful for your leadership. This is about justice for the most vulnerable in our community. This is about justice for special needs populations, approximately 20% of which are represented in our criminal justice system throughout the United States. And I view all of you as liberators for the special needs population. There's an absolutely critical role for each and every one of us to play to promote this model, to play an active role in connecting with courts, to offer them alternative sentencing options through collaborative partnerships, through reaching out, through taking advantage of initiatives that emerge and opportunities that emerge with the challenges. We all know about the court crisis that's afflicting California. Well, at the same time, this model is perfectly poised to help provide a benefit to the courts because you can divert the flow of cases that don't belong in our justice system and keep them in a community where they can get the help and the therapy that they need. So to put things in perspective, I'm particularly concerned about the imminence of the winding down, of the wars winding down, and what the implications are for our communities as we look at mental health, as we look at trauma. Consider that as I speak, 233,000 veterans from the Vietnam-era war are in our jails and prisons. Now think about that. That's 233,000, mostly men, it's 99%, who are in their 50s, 60s, and early 70s. They're not counted among the homeless population. They're not counted among the ranks of the unemployed, but if and when they leave jail, that's exactly what they're headed for. And look at the pattern that we saw happen after Vietnam, because we can predict it's going to happen again. We did not know much about PTSD. We did not really have a name for it back in the 60s, but we know about it now, and we saw how devastating it is, particularly with a culture that puts you in denial, that thinks has you think you're indestructible. I myself am a veteran, and I'll never forget walking pneumonia and trying to sleep it off because I didn't want to go to sick bay. Finally, after barely being able to get up and walk, I told my buddy, I got to go to sick bay today. I'm just dizzy as can be. And he kind of scoffed, said, you wuss. Well, the doctor said if I hadn't gotten in, I would have died in 3 days. I had one lung entirely filled with phlegm. That's for a physical ailment. Imagine how much more so for a mental health ailment. So it's that culture of denial that is one of the major impediments and challenges that we have to help negotiate. The pattern was the veteran comes back, the warrior who thinks he's indestructible, has PTSD, he's in denial, or she's in denial now. 15% of our combat veterans are females, and they're also multi-systemically treated with trauma. They've been sexually abused in unbelievable numbers, about 35%. They're coming back to their community. They self-medicate because they can't deal with the depression, the nightmares, revisiting all the horrors that they experienced, having seen children die, innocent people die, having wounded comrade die in your arms. They self-medicate, they begin to act out, it puts a strain on their relationships. Ultimately, they end up in jail. Now what happens when they come out? Well, employers are much more sophisticated, much more prejudiced about having a criminal record. Try to get a job in this economy. Veterans returning from wars have twice the rate of unemployment as the normal population. So now you can't get work. Now you're further depressed, you become suicidal, the economic strain puts tension on your family, it fractures the family, you go through a horrific divorce that has spillover effects on children and traumatizes them. Then you end up cyclically involved in homelessness, depression, addiction, and involvement in our criminal justice system. And that's the pattern that we're trying to break with respect to the next generation. About 300,000 veterans, as they project, will have PTSD from the unprecedented 12 years of combat. Well, that's the dark side. The good side is that the therapeutic and collaborative justice model has emerged with great force and effect in the last few years. 3 years ago, we did not have a thing called a Veterans Treatment Court. We now have about 150 of them throughout the country. They project in the next 2 years about 500. What I love about this court model, and actually, for any of you familiar with Judge Wendy Lindley's model in Santa Ana? Just curious if you can show your hand. If you have a chance, it is worth the trip of a lifetime. It's one of the most inspiring things I've seen in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty and empowering the special needs populations to have the help they need to take ownership of their destiny again. Absolutely magnificent. What this woman did was convert a department store and craft office space and invite community partners to have free rent and work alongside of her. And she embedded her court in this community service center. And it's just magnificent to see her liberating the homeless, the mentally ill, the traumatized, combat veterans, and helping them reclaim their lives, restoring a normalcy of their lives with their family, helping facilitate their reentry into the workforce. Absolutely magnificent. Actually, I was able to have Steve Lopez go and see her, and I said, Steve, if I do nothing more than shine a light on what this woman and people like Judge Manley and Judge Tynan are doing, I've lived a decent life. They are literally saving lives. You've seen a lot of statistics, and I have a very short time, which is a challenge for a lawyer with a captive audience, but I do want to share the human face of what's at stake. And I'll never forget, in 2001, I was at a conference with Judge Stephen Manley. I'm curious how many of you have heard of Steve. He's absolutely a saint. And I was blown away when I saw him present on his mental health court model. He actually was doing the special needs model throughout, basically whatever it takes to help people who obviously are acting out trauma, or acting out instability, acting out addiction, and are not acting on any kind of criminal animus or predilection, and tailoring the services to hold not just the individual accountable for their behavior, but what we as a community can do to make sure that you have a right and just outcome, that you have a decent future that you're entitled to, and recognizing the challenges that you're up against. Anyway, I saw him in San Diego and described what he was doing, and I said, I've got to see this man in person and what he's doing. I went up to San Jose with a few of my colleagues. We were absolutely blown away. The very first case was a woman who was graduating. 2 years before, she had been having her children panhandle for her drug addiction while they lived in cardboard boxes on the streets. She came before Judge Manley. He said, I don't want to imprison you, but you need help, and I don't want to take your children away from you, but you need help, and if you accept help, you don't have to worry about jail. And she responded, screw you, Your Honor, you're not going to tell me how to live my goddamn life. I'll take my damn jail time. And most judges at that point said, well, you made a choice. Okay, that's your choice. I feel bad, but that's your choice. Well, he didn't do that. He began writing to her. He engaged her in jail and said, I want you to know the door is always open, but your children need their parent to make a better choice. And ultimately, after 30 days of engaging her and writing repeat letters, she accepted the help she needed. Here it is 2 years later. We're watching her graduate. She's there with the cake for the judge. The 2 children are there with glowing report cards. She was managing an apartment complex, had 2 jobs. The judge comes off the bench with toys for the kids, and there's hugs and tears all around. And he goes, wasn't always so good, was it, Miss So-and-so? And she said, no, Your Honor. As a matter of fact, when you put me in jail because I wouldn't accept treatment and took my kids away from me, I hated you more than any human being I've ever met in my life. And I don't know if you know Judge Manley, there's the one guy who wears a patch. He goes, I know, I still got you hating all your father remind me. She said, but those 30 days you put me in jail and didn't give up on me saved my life. 5 people said the exact same phrase. Your Honor, those 10 days you put me in jail, but you didn't give up on me, saved my life. Your Honor, those 5 days you put me in jail and didn't give up on me, saved my life. It was absolutely unbelievable to see how life-saving this model was and how inspiring a person who decided he was not going to give up on this population and what the difference they could make. The other magnificent thing about this model is people who get off track come back voluntarily. And how many of you who have ever been in criminal court would think of ever going back voluntarily to a criminal court building? It just doesn't happen. And we'll never forget this one case of a man that was doing really well, that they were hopeful for his outcomes when they said suddenly we lost contact with him. And he said, well, he knows he's supposed to give us a progress report today. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, in the middle of the court proceeding, this man walks in. Now, picture a courtroom with 150 people in it. And this man comes in at the back, and all of a sudden, the judge is in the middle of the calendar, drops everything and says, Mr. So-and-so, it's so good to see you. And the whole court turns their attention to this poor guy. He's looking up at everyone looking at him. He goes, oh, hi, Judge. I'm sorry. I'm glad to be here. He goes, well, where have you been? We've all been so worried about you. well, I was invited to be on a ranch. He goes, well, how was that? That sounds great. He goes, well, I found out that being around animals is better than being on drugs. And the judge goes, look at that, you just taught us something invaluable. And then the whole place just erupts in applause. And then the team comes over, just brings him in under hugs, and it's absolutely beautiful. The other facet of it that's critical is the community is engaged as part of the solution. And that's where each and every one of us can come in, is each and every one of us can reach out to courts and help educate them about the power of this model that's saving people's lives. And when you see and consider the fact that, I'll never forget a veteran who was acting out, with anger, with depression, with suicidal ideation, broke all the relationships in his life, and then came before Judge Wendy Lindley in Santa Ana, and it's now a year and a half later, after he finally got the help he needed, and he's there with his parents, with his little girl, and you see how much was at stake, and what an incredible role this model has to help families stay intact, to help restore that love, to help restore that life, and help him regain ownership of his own destiny. Couple critical things to keep in mind as we build this model is I work for a legal service partner, and public counsel has played a very vital role to promote this particular model. And I expect great things to come out of this conference, thanks to Ellen's leadership. We held a leadership summit on mental health courts thanks to Hilton and the Corporation for Supportive Housing about 5 years ago, where we had judges come in and talk about the model with community leaders. And Sheriff Baca and Marv Southard were so moved by this that we held a special meeting with the presiding judge, and Marv committed the resources to enable us to have a prototype mental health court in Los Angeles County. And again, that was the result of people coming together, seeing the power of this model, deciding that we're going to do something to take the next step. So my thanks to you, Dr. Soder. And Dave Meyer, too, was extremely instrumental in that. In terms of value-added legal services, the Alameda model for juveniles, for those of you who look at the juveniles present challenges, I think you saw from the graphs that we saw from our prior speaker, Professor Teplin, that are far more different than the adult population. Often these youth come out of foster care with extreme trauma. One of the most frightening statistics that I've seen was the grand jury report in 2006 indicating an estimated 70% of California's prisoners have been in foster care or institutional living. I see my time is up. I'm going to ask my friend Anna Yee, who graciously split her time with me, to come up now, and then I'll hold off for questions afterwards, and I have a couple quick minor remarks.